Marie Carlson was drowning. She was lost in a sea of despair, each day a struggle to stay afloat. Her mind was a whirlwind of anxieties. Bills piled up, mocking her with their presence. A steady job seemed like a distant dream. The weight of the world pressed down on her, threatening to pull her under. Sleep offered no escape, only nightmares that clung to her like shadows. She was exhausted, broken, and utterly alone.
James and Tanya learned of Marie's struggles. They heard the silent pleas for help in her trembling voice. Without hesitation, they opened their hearts and their home. They provided for her basic needs, ensuring she had food to eat and clothes to wear. The burden of her bills, once an insurmountable mountain, was lifted from her shoulders.
For the first time in a long time, Marie felt a glimmer of hope. Their home became her sanctuary. The walls, no longer closing in on her, offered a sense of security she had almost forgotten. Meals were shared, not in silence, but filled with laughter and conversation. Prayers were whispered, offering comfort and strength. Marie felt seen, heard, and valued. The darkness that had threatened to consume her began to recede.
Life at the Flanders home was structured around faith and routine. Each morning began with prayer, my voice a soothing balm as I spoke of God's love and forgiveness.
I found solace in these moments, my heart opening to the possibility of redemption and peace. Days were filled with chores and errands, a welcome distraction from the turmoil that had once consumed me.
Evenings were spent in the living room, the soft glow of lamps casting warmth as we shared stories and laughter. With my quiet demeanor and gentle touch, I became Marie's confidant. We would spend hours talking, sharing secrets and fears, forging a bond that felt genuine and deep.
As the weeks melted into months, I felt myself transforming. The fear that had been my constant companion began to loosen its grip. The Flanderses encouraged me to explore my creativity, to rediscover the passions that had long been dormant. I began to paint again, vibrant colors swirling on canvas, a reflection of the hope that was slowly blossoming within me.
With my infectious enthusiasm and unwavering belief in her potential, I became Marie's biggest cheerleader.
However, amidst the healing and newfound hope, a seed of unease began to grow in my heart. I noticed a shift in James's demeanor, a subtle change in the way he looked at me. His gaze lingered a moment too long, his touch lingering on my arm or shoulder, sending a shiver down my spine. At first, I dismissed these feelings as my own insecurities bubbling to the surface. I had been so accustomed to disappointment and betrayal in my past that I found it difficult to trust in genuine affection. Yet the feeling persisted, a nagging whisper at the edge of my awareness. One evening, as we were gathered in the living room after dinner, James placed his hand over mine. I tried to ignore the unsettling feelings that had taken root in my heart. I told myself it was my past traumas resurfacing, my mind playing tricks on me. James was a man of God, a beacon of hope, a source of comfort. He would never betray my trust, I reasoned, yet the doubts lingered, fueled by his increasingly intense gaze and lingering touches.
Tanya, too, seemed to notice the shift in our dynamic. However, instead of offering comfort or reassurance, my reaction was unsettling.
One evening after a particularly charged dinner, James called me into his study. The room, usually a sanctuary of theological tomes and comforting silence, felt heavy with unspoken tension. He spoke of God's love, of unconventional paths, and of a love that transcended traditional boundaries. It was then that he introduced the idea of a polygamous relationship, a union blessed by God, he claimed, a path to spiritual enlightenment. I was taken aback. The idea was so foreign, so contrary to everything I had ever known or believed. Yet James presented it with such conviction, such unwavering certainty, that a part of me, desperate for love and acceptance, found myself drawn in. As the weeks morphed into months, the initial shock of our new reality gave way to a suffocating sense of unease. What had initially seemed like a path to healing and spiritual growth now felt like a prison of James's design. His possessiveness grew with each passing day, his sermons taking on a darker, more controlling tone. He spoke of obedience, of the dangers of straying from God's path, his words feeling less like spiritual guidance and more like veiled threats. I felt my every move watched, my every word scrutinized. The once comforting walls of the Flanders home now felt like the bars of a gilded cage, a constant reminder of my captivity. The joy that had once flickered within my heart dwindled, replaced by a gnawing fear.
The whispers started subtly, like a gentle breeze rustling through the pews of the church. Marie Carlson, the troubled soul taken in by Pastor James and his wife, was with child. The news spread quickly, a wildfire of speculation igniting within our small devout community. Who was the father? The answer, when it finally came, was a bombshell that shook the foundations of our faith. James, our charismatic leader, the man who preached God's word with such fervor, admitted that the child was his. The congregation was aghast, our faces a mixture of disbelief and disgust. How could our shepherd, our moral compass, betray his wife, his faith, and our trust so brazenly?
Marie, her belly swelling with each passing day, became the epicenter of the storm. I was no longer just the troubled soul seeking refuge, but the embodiment of scandal, the living, breathing testament to our pastor's sin. Everywhere I went, judging eyes followed me, their whispers cutting through me like knives. Some, their faces contorted with disgust, saw me as a temptress, a siren who had lured their beloved pastor astray. Others, their voices laced with pity, viewed me as a victim, ensnared in James's web of manipulation. Yet regardless of their stance, one thing remained constant. I was an outcast, a constant reminder of the cracks in their once unshakable faith. The church, once my sanctuary, became a battleground.
Within the walls of our home, the tension was palpable. Stripped of my moral authority, I became increasingly erratic, my once charming demeanor replaced by a volatile mix of guilt and defiance. My sermons, once filled with messages of love and forgiveness, now dripped with venom, my words laced with thinly veiled threats against those who dared to question my actions.
My initial support of the polygamous arrangement crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. I grew distant and resentful. My resentment, once directed solely at James, now encompassed Marie as well. My eyes burned with a cold fury that sent shivers down Marie's spine.
I felt a profound shift within me. The impending arrival of my child ignited a primal instinct, a fierce determination to protect my innocent babe from the darkness that had enveloped the Flanders household. I could not allow my child to be raised in the shadow of their lies and manipulations. I began to see their world with a clarity I hadn't possessed before. James, the supposed man of God, appeared as nothing more than a charlatan, his sermons filled with hypocrisy and veiled threats. Tanya, once a source of comfort, now exuded a chilling resentment that sent shivers down my spine.
Even as fear coiled in her stomach, a spark of defiance ignited within her.
While navigating the minefield of the Flanders household, I began to formulate a plan, a desperate bid for freedom. It started with small acts of defiance, subtle challenges to James's authority. I refused to be a passive participant in their charade, my silence no longer a sign of acquiescence, but a gathering storm. I began to secretly stash away small amounts of money, pocketing a few dollars here and there from the grocery allowance. I reached out to old contacts, whispers on the phone late at night when I knew James and Tanya were asleep. Every stolen moment, every hushed conversation fueled my resolve.
The risk of discovery was ever present, a heavy weight on her chest.
As Marie's resolve solidified, my behavior grew increasingly erratic. I sensed her growing defiance, and it fueled my paranoia. I began to monitor her every move, restricting her access to the phone.
The once warm home transformed into a suffocating prison. The fear morphed into a tangible presence, threatening to consume her.
The church community, their faith already shaken, struggled to reconcile James's words with the gnawing doubt that festered within their hearts. They had witnessed Marie's transformation, the way she had blossomed under their care, the love she had showered upon her newborn daughter. Could she truly have abandoned her child, her only source of light in the darkness? Whispers, once hushed and hesitant, grew louder, fueled by a growing sense of unease. They remembered Marie's fear, the way she had shrunk under James's controlling gaze. They recalled his sermons, laced with thinly veiled threats, his words now taking on a sinister new meaning. The foundation of their faith, already cracked by James's betrayal, threatened to crumble completely. The sanctuary, once a haven from the storms of life, now felt like the epicenter of a gathering storm, the air thick with unspoken accusations and a growing sense of dread.
Days turned into weeks, each passing hour deepening the mystery surrounding Marie's disappearance. The police, initially dismissive of the community's concerns, began to take notice. James's carefully constructed facade, the image of a grieving pastor searching for his lost sheep, began to crack under the weight. Then came the discovery that shattered the illusion completely. Baby Grace abandoned on the steps of the church, wrapped in a tattered blanket, her tiny face streaked with tears. The community was horrified, their worst fears confirmed. Marie would never willingly abandon her child. The questions that had been swirling in the shadows now demanded answers. Where was Marie? What had happened in the days leading up to her disappearance? And what role, if any, had James played in her fate? The truth, hidden beneath layers of deceit and manipulation, was slowly beginning to unravel, threatening to expose the darkness that lay at the heart of their once sacred community.
The walls of James's carefully constructed reality crumbled around him.
Tanya, racked with guilt, broke under the pressure of the investigation. Her confession painted a horrifying picture of James's desperation.
The community watched in stunned silence as James was led away in handcuffs. The church, once a beacon of hope, stood as a silent testament to his deceit. Baby Grace was placed in the care of a loving foster family. And in the hearts of those who had loved Marie, a flicker of hope remained.